Welcome everyone to tonight's webinar. My name is Adam and I'll be your moderator. Dr. Bobby Birdi is our speaker tonight, and he'll be covering the restorative triple threat, specifically intraoral scanning, 3D printing, and chairside milling for dental restorations. If anyone has any questions, please add them into the Q&A section and we'll answer them at the end. And Henry Schein is not offering CE credit for viewing or attending this presentation live or on demand. Dr. Birdi, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Henry Schein webinar series. I'm Dr. Bobby Birdi. We're going to be talking a bunch about the restorative triple threat today, intraoral scanning, 3D printing, and in-office chairside milling for dental restorations. I'm a periodontist and prosthodontist from Vancouver, Canada, and we're going to spend a little bit of time together just kind of discussing some of these topics, and I'm going to try to put it to fruition so we can hopefully get on with this and have a good time. Let's get started here. So we're going to talk about, a lot of this is restorative aspects. I'm going to talk a little bit about what my practice is like and kind of how we've implemented this type of these types of technology in our office from the get-go, and just kind of really spent a lot of time together, just having a lot of fun and utilizing technology. And we utilize all three of these aspects of technology in our practice every single day, and we'll go through it in a little bit. So just a little bit about myself. Those of you that don't know me, that's me on the video and the guy in the picture. I'm Canadian. I'm from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, born and raised. Hockey fans, the Stanley Cups when I was a kid growing up, and a lot of Edmonton Oilers stuff. And then I did my bachelor's degree there at the University of Alberta. And then I went to Saskatchewan, which is kind of straight north of Montana for those of you in the United States. And I did my dental degree there, 4-year dental degree. And then from there, I moved down to the Midwest and moved to the University of Minnesota, where I did 3 years of pros and then 3 years of perio. Was lucky enough to get my boards, both in the US and Canada, in both those specialties. And then still I'm faculty at the University of Minnesota teaching in the graduate department. And then I also now reside in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, where I also teach at the University of British Columbia. So lots of academia. I'm also currently the president of the Western Society of Periodontology, which is a fairly prominent periodontal organization in North America. It encompasses many states and many provinces, as well as Mexico. And then I'm also on the executive board for the Vancouver District Dental Society and incoming president. So lots of academia, obviously, and everything else. And also kind of like, what is this guy going to talk about? Is he going to talk about a lot of studies and a lot of science so he can bore me for the next hour? No, we're going to talk about practice, because although I'm spending a lot of time teaching and a lot of time doing things like that, I'm in full-time private practice. I practice today all day. And then, now I'm here doing this webinar with you and spending some time and trying to just share some of my experiences and kind of things that we love hanging out and talking about. This is the view from our practice in Vancouver. It's called BC Periodontal Health and Implant Center. We are a surgical prosthetic treatment center. This is the view in the evening as well. It's not a bad view. We got a view of the mountains and the view of the skyline in Vancouver. Our office is built as a teaching center and a center for excellence, in the sense that we try to build things from the get-go and in terms of implementing technology in every aspect and every avenue. I lecture on this kind of stuff all over the place, and involving all the three modalities we're going to talk about, but also about CBCT technology as well. Welcome all of you to come visit. Our office is always open for visitors. We always have somebody coming through to look at things or spend some time with us, and we were happy to share and happy to have everyone around and spend some time with us. This is how our practice was first kind of initiated. It was myself and a whole bunch of gentlemen that are all the world of my dad. I always say it's me and the old guys. And we had multiple periodontists, so 3 periodontists, an implantologist, myself, who's a prosthodontist and a periodontist. And we got together and started putting together kind of a center of multi-specialty, multidisciplinary care. And we went along this way, practicing for about 5 years, where you can see this is the view from every operatory, and trying to implement as much technology as we could. We had Combi from the get-go, IO scanning from the get-go. I've been in this space doing kind of utilizing this type of technology for over 10 years now, which has been a lot of fun and a lot of fun, just kind of spending a lot of time just helping our patients out and really using the power of technology throughout our practice. So around this time, we went around this way or along this way for about 10 years, or sorry, about 5 years, sorry. And then at that point, then we decided, hey, listen, what are we going to do? We have all this technology and all these new things that are coming out, and what do we want to, how do we want to go about that? And so we started to ask ourselves those questions. And when you think about a lecture like this, where we're talking about, iOS scanning and 3D printing and milling, you gotta, we ask ourselves the same question, and I think it's a question you should ask yourself: is are you digital? When I went to dental school, are you digital meant? Do you have digital X-rays, or do you still, dip your X-rays and so on and so forth? Now, are you digital? Is do you use, augmented reality or virtual reality to help plan your smile design? Are you able to three-dimensionally, visualize what your final restoration is going to be like, without picking up a scalpel or a burr. So we've come a long way in a very short period of time, and I think that's the coolest thing about dentistry at this point in time is that we can really just hopefully and just harness all this technology and spend the time together, so we really have a great time just learning and understanding and really spending some time. So what I did at that point is then I hired this guy, Mr. Angus Berry, and we built an all-purpose lab as well. So we also had a teaching center as well. So we are what people call, I heard this in Europe recently, it's called a vertically integrated practice, where we have surgery, we have prosthetics, we have imaging, we have iOS scanning, we have 3D printing, milling, and an all-purpose lab as well. So it allowed us to really get into the space. I didn't really learn. It's funny saying this as a prosthodontist, and I didn't really learn as much as I could have or I should have about prosthodontics, about restorative dentistry, until we had a lab, until we learned about all these different modalities. Because it's only when you learn about this stuff and you learn about how intricately detailed, but also how reliant we are on the lab, and how lab decisions, lab costs, lab materials really dictate how we do treatment and what we can provide, and then how quickly or how late, and so on and so forth. So was a lot of fun. Like I said before, we got a whole bunch of different types of equipment, and then we also had our team grow with multiple more prosthodontists and periodontists, and multiple locations. And so we've got a what people would call like a one-stop shop, or a vertically integrated practice, where we can really provide all aspects of care and really utilize this type of treatment or this type of modality throughout everything we're doing, which is a lot of fun. So it's been a lot of fun that way. We've been really realizing what we can or cannot do, and what we are able to really have fun doing. So it's been a lot of fun that way. So today we're going to talk about a bunch of different things. We're going to be talking about iOS scanners, mills, printers, how to utilize this in your practice. In terms of the hierarchy, or how quickly or how much of this you want to implement in your practice, it always can seem very daunting. It can seem very, like, wow, there's so many different things out there, and which one do I get? And you don't want to make a mistake, and you don't want to get something that's going to collect dust, but you still think it's pretty cool, and you feel like, well, if I don't get into this, and so on and so forth, maybe I'll be left behind. And so, I'll talk a little bit about this, and say, what, our practice is very unique, and how large it is, and how many different moving pieces and different people are involved, and different technology pieces are involved. But in general, this can be totally just, it can be related to just anyone's practice. If it's a general practice or regular practice, it doesn't really matter if you're an implant practice or restorative practice, or you're doing a lot of Invisalign or whatever have you. There's lots of different avenues out there for you to really go about it. So when it comes to the different types of modalities out there, of all the things we're going to talk about today, iOS scanning is going to be the most important thing. And what I mean by that is that it is going to make the biggest and the largest impact on your practice. And I'll show you why. Intraoral scanning, whether you're thinking about it, or so on and so forth. At this point, I think we've got 4 scanners in our office, and it's really important to have this. The reason being is because the benefits definitely outweigh the initial costs, and long term, it's going to be cheaper to have an iOS scanner than to continue to take regular impressions. But there's so much in terms of information that you gain, and also that you don't lose impressions, you don't lose materials, you don't have to store models, so on and so forth. So there's a huge benefit. So of all the different types of technology we're going to talk about, iOS scanning is one of those things that you really want to think about in your practice, and that's the very first step. Because if you can go about it that way, and spend some money on getting yourself an intraoral scanner, or digital impressions, I think that's going to be a fantastic way to go about it. And I'll talk about various different scanners that are out there and so on and so forth. The next one's going to be 3D printing. 3D printing, the reason why we feel that, and I feel that it's probably the next step in your journey, is because of the cost. The cost of 3D printers is not very much in terms of relative to what a mill would cost. So 3D printing, you get a 3D printer for less than $10,000, and you'll be able to print a lot of things, and we'll go through some of that as well. And then in terms of after that 3D printing, then we can talk about things like in-office milling or chairside milling. There's lots of great milling units out there, classic ones like Cerac, obviously, and I'll be showcasing some of the Ivoclar products. But in general, there's a lot of options out there. It's no longer just one, which is great. Gives you something, gives you a choice, gives you the ability, and each mill is going to be a little bit different. And that jump from going from scanning and printing or scanning to milling can be a large jump, because in terms of in-office milling, now you're talking about being the lab. You're talking about milling something, designing, sintering, so on and so forth, and really cleaning up your restorations. And some, some dentists want to go to that route, and some don't, and that's okay. And then in the end, we're going to talk about this in terms of the digital workflow. Digital workflow is something that encompasses all technology. In a lot of the lectures I give, I was just in Phoenix and Las Vegas speaking on this, and it involves a lot of times cone beam CT scanning, which is really cool. So this is a video from it's about 10 years old now. When we first started, you can tell our iOS scanner was not color, and we were amalgamating or fusing cone beam CT technology and iOS scanning to try to make sure that we try to digitize our patients, trying to make sure that we could look at our patients and provide information and look at what's going on in someone's mouth while they're sitting at home, and not just through a two-dimensional image, but through three-dimensional images and color iOS scanners. So those of you that are thinking about getting an iOS scanner, and I think now it's much more mainstream. We're seeing tremendous amounts more of penetration into the market. And I'm lucky that I run a study club in Vancouver with the editor of the Journal of Cosmetic Dentistry, Dr. Ed Lowe. And about a couple of years ago, prior to COVID, what we did is we ran kind of a really unique year where we had a different iOS scanner company come to our study club and help us utilize and test out the various iOS scanners that were out there. And that was a tremendous amount of fun. Also, it'll really allow you to see the pros and cons of each different iOS scanner, and also to really look at, hey, listen, what am I using it for? When it comes to comparing digital impressions to conventional impressions, there's a lot of things that can be said. There's less patient discomfort because, the patients talk to their friends and they write reviews online. They say, I didn't have to worry about the goop in my mouth, so on and so forth. It takes less time. Yes, it does take less time eventually. Initially, there's a steep learning curve that you're going to have to kind of really be all in with, and with you and your staff. And there's no need for model pouring. You're emailing or transferring data really easily. There's no extra space required for models, which is fantastic. But and the other two benefits obviously are you don't lose information, so you don't ever lose an impression or a model, and you can easily transfer it to someone else on the other side of the world if you needed to. It really allows you to utilize labs, and some of them, if you have certain labs that you like or certain partners that you work with, they don't necessarily have to be geographically right next to you or close by. In terms of conventional impressions, there can be more patient discomfort, the gagging, the goop in their mouth. It can take more time. In the end, it will take more time than an iOS scan, but it all depends on kind of, we've got some really kick butt dentalists in our office that could take a regular impression, and I would say that they're as quick as not quicker than a digital impression at times. But the problem is that their impressions may not always be perfect. There may always be maybe a void, there may be a bubble, there may be where the impression pulls. I don't think all of us have had the lab call us or email us saying, hey, listen, the proximal contact beside your crown prep, you didn't get it perfect. So as a result, we can't guarantee that your proximal is going to be on, or, the impression pulled when you thought you got the margin, so on and so forth, the distortion possibilities. And of course, you've got to pour the model. A lot of times labs are going to digitize your impression now. They put your impression into a lab scanner, and then they scan it to allow you to enter the digital workflow that way. And of course, you've got space requirements, right? So like today, paper The charts hopefully are a thing of the past, not for everybody. But if we can avoid having more and more space in a busy city like Vancouver, space is really expensive. So to continue to have shelves where we keep models or keep impressions can be difficult. And after working in the lab and spending better part of my career doing lab work and understanding it, doing having an impression, having to do a second pour or a third pour of an impression is never a great idea, never fun, and the accuracy of things can be will be diminished over every time. Whereas in terms of an iOS scan, what you get is what you get, and you don't ever lose any information, which is pretty important. So there's lots of different ones out there, lots of studies that show various scanners work. In general, I will tell you that when it comes to iOS scanners in the market, they all work. They all will provide you with today in 2022, they all provide you with an impression that's accurate, impression that's repeatable, impression that's going to provide you with the information you need. So you can really do a good job, really making sure that you get all the information you need, various different types. And so I'll go through some of the reasons why you pick one. This is a great study, a hallmark study done in 2015 by the ADA, comparing various scanners. Now, it's not about which one is the best or which one is the worst in these tables. The reason being is because I can find another study that has a very different order. But in the end, what is important to understand is that even the highest numbers on these charts are most times are better than a conventional impression, and that's the take-home message is that they are more accurate. They do capture more information, and the information does not distort or change over time, which is fantastic. So, like I said before, if you look at a traditional impression in terms of in terms of a digital impression is going to do better, irrespective of the company, irrespective of the make every single time. So, how do you pick one? What do you decide? This study was done by Dr. Delku. There's been many multiple parts to it, and basically what they found was that a lot of different scanners out there. They compared them to what's called an Atos scanner. So all of the technology we use for CAD CAM and dentistry is not developed by dentistry. It's developed in um, other industries, and then we bring it to dentistry with just looking at different margins or looking at different technologies and how we can make it so it's dental. So if you look at a slide here, this is just all the margins of everything. If you look at the upper left Atos image, that's what we would think is true perfect. That's a very expensive, like $400,000 CAD CAM image of CAD CAM impression, which is non-dental, and then you compare it to all the ones that we have that are chairside. And this is since this slide came out in 2018, there's been various different innovations. The Prime Scan has come out from Cerac, Trios has come out, Trios 4. Carestream has come out with different scanners, so on and so forth. So as a result, we don't have a Medit on here. We don't have the new cable scanner, which is related to Medit. As a result, it's different. But the one thing that is provided by iOS scanners that is the most important thing for a lab technician is color. And so color is really important because, as you can imagine, when things are all one color, you're looking for just different variations in the color or variations in the texture of what you're seeing. But when there's an actual color difference, you can really find a margin. You can really find and allocate and look at where things are. You can also take a stump shade. The lab will then know, hey, listen, that tooth is really, really dark, and maybe it has a dark root in after a root canal, or maybe it has some amalgam in it, and so on and so forth. So if you're using a ceramic restoration, then they know, hey, listen, maybe we should call and say, hey, listen, we need something to block this color out so we can make something that's going to look better. So all that is important. And so digital impressioning is providing all that information to us right away. So how do you pick one? We use a lot of 3Shape in our office and cable. We have we've tested so many different types of iOS scanners in the market. And how do you pick one? How do you choose which one to use? In my opinion, like the Prime scan is a great scanner, a great example. It's a great scanner from Cerac. It's fast, it's accurate. But when we take it out of the Cerac workflow, sometimes we see issues. We've seen issues in our office. Whereas if we use a 3Shape or we use a Medit or a cable, we do okay, and we were able to keep in the same workflow. So in terms of choosing an iOS scanner, unless you're going to be taking all of the scans yourself, I always recommend involving your staff. And so if your staff is going to take your staff to a trade show, which you can go to now or check out what some of the new scanners out there, have them look at it, have them try it out, have them feel it, have them utilize it, because what you want to do is just remove all hurdles and remove all barriers so that they'll want to use it. They want to see how cool it is and how much fun it is to use and all the things that you can do with it. And by doing so, then you'll be able to really, get it implemented in your practice. Because implementing something to your practice isn't just by dictating it. It's also removing all hurdles and trying to get your team involved so it becomes a collaboration and something all the team wants to do. So you can imagine just from a couple of scans that are color, you can see how much more information you get. You can tell where there's a bonded tooth in place. You can see where the recession is. You can see the colors of the roots and the colors of cementum. You can see the contours of the tissue. You can see that not all the tissue is the same color. You can see where there's a chipped crown on the upper right side. There's lots of different things that you can see that the lab will say, I think I saw that in the model if it was a regular gypsum model. But when it's an image, you can really see that. And when you take a look at that image and you're able to see it in terms of, taking that image and rotating it and seeing all the different things that are possible, you can really make this image right now where you're right behind the teeth. That's invaluable. It's something that you don't get regular impressions, and you're able to digitize things and see how much overjet, how much overbite, what is the translucency of teeth, what are things that you look like, how does it look like in real life, and that really helps you, and it really helps your lab in terms of diagnosis, but also in terms of designing and formulating your restoration and also your restorative plan. Because in a case like this, where we try to do minimally invasive dentistry and we see there's an implant in a place and we have an issue, when we do finalize a case like this and we provide the final restorations, we want to provide something that's going to be harmonious with the gingiva and harmonious with the architecture of the teeth and also everything else. You can see some staining on these restorations. This case is now almost 7 years old. So there's a lot of different things that we want to capture, and iOS scanning or intraoral scanning really helps us pick one. And so in terms of choosing an iOS scanner, it's no different than like choosing a car. I always say that because I've got a car that has a heck of a lot of options that I don't use. So, whether it's self-driving or heated seats or, all of a sudden I can put a scent in my vehicle or something, whatever else it is, there's lots of different options in a vehicle. And if you don't use them, then what are they use to you? Having all the bells and whistles isn't always important. So you got to look at your practice. If you're using something just for restorative dentistry, and most of the scanners will work perfectly. If you're a heavy implant practice, I think Trios and Medit and the cable have to do a really, really good job. And then if you're in a CEREC workflow, a prime scan is definitely the option and definitely the best one to go with. So it just depends on kind of where you're doing and how everything's going and which option you need and then what your practice is like and how you're dealing with that things in your practice and what kind of practice you have. So just a classic example, let's say that we have 2 implants here. We're going to take a final impression. So if you took a full arch impression with an iOS scanner, most of the times, all the time, my staff does this for me. When we sit down, they just take an iOS scan of the entire arch. The reason why iOS scanning is going to be faster than a regular impression and so on and so forth is because if you've taken a preliminary scan of just the entire arch of the entire mouth of the entire sextant or quadrant, when you take your final impression, you only have to impress what's changed. So a lot of times your final impression is like a 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter final impression, or maybe a 2 centimeter by 2 centimeter final impression. It's not very large. So as a result, it takes minutes, not even minutes, sometimes seconds, just to do a final impression of your prep tooth because you're only having to record what's changed. Everything else is the same, and the computer will then stitch that together, and so you can actually see things and so on and so forth. Also, it provides a lot of information to the lab because you can do what's called a pre-scan, so they know if you're going to prep a tooth, let's say, and they can see how that tooth looked and the contours and shapes and how it was an occlusion. And then after you've prepped it, you're just taking an impression of your prep. And now the lab can say, hey, listen, that's how that tooth was fit into the occlusion previously. And this is how we're going to make the crown now to do something better. So in general, that's one of the benefits of iOS scanning is that you only have to scan what's changed. And then everything else is digital. And so one of the other things that's amazing in terms of iOS scanning and technology is the communication factor. Taking an intraoral photo is great, but having a 3-dimensional image of someone's teeth and being able to move things around and show them Every single week, we have someone taking a photo or a video of what they're seeing on the screen and then posting it, saying, "Well, this is so cool. I'm at my dental office and look at all the cool things that I can see. This is my mouth." So there's a lot of fun things about that, and just a lot of great ways for opening up new avenues, new practice. Just learning and understanding and communicating. One of the best things for technology for us is that we find that technology really helps us communicate to our patients and to other people, because that same image or that same workflow, or those same images, your lab is going to use. This is how your lab is going to design restorations. They're going to find the scan bodies and put the implants. If this was a prep tooth, they're going to look at the prep and then build the teeth out, look at it in all dimensions. And even if you take a regular impression, your lab is doing this now. They're digitizing your impression to design the restorations in CAD CAM on a computer. People aren't carving wax anymore, so on and so forth. And it really allows you to understand and go about it and communicate to your lab. So the biggest largest benefits of technology and iOS scanning is going to be the communication aspect, and of course all the benefits you get from technology. There's iOS scanners out there that'll take a shade for you now, will help with mandibular motion, even caries detection. There's so many different things out there, and that's great and dandy and fine. But if you're not going to use it, if you're not going to be using those attributes, it's not necessarily needed that you have them. They'll just you have to look at your practice and pick what's the best for your practice. And this is not one of those times where you want to like order something just in case because I'm going to get into this or get into that. It all depends on kind of how likely is that going to happen. I have yet to meet someone who's got into something just because they had to get an iOS scanner. So in general, it's supposed to be there to provide information, increase your workflow, and just benefit your practice and your patients. So in demonstrating or understanding 3D printing and milling and tying it all together, I'm going to show you one case that will discuss kind of all aspects of things. This is a case that I presented at the American Academy of Restorative Dentistry a few years ago, and it's going to be published at some point, I think, hopefully. And this is a case that I call Pandora's box. The reason why I call this Pandora's box is this patient came in and they had a canine lateral canine peer abutted 6-unit fixed partial denture bridge, and it's moving. And so the bridge is moving, and after checking everything, we can't tell if the bridge is moving or the teeth are moving. And so it was very difficult. And so when we took our radiographs and looked at some of the issues there, getting endo consults where we have some issues at the end of a root, understanding where things are, and we've got some attachment loss in places, but in general, patients looking to have some sort of replacement here. So what are we going to do? And then this one kind of drove me crazy a little bit because in terms of 19, if it was like 1956 or 2022, we would have to do the same thing. If the patient showed up in your office with a bridge like this that was defective, you'd probably take a matrix and then look to cut the bridge off and see what's what and find out what's going on. And the reason why is the x-rays can't go through metal. And if it was in the 50s or if it's now, our treatment's going to be pretty much the same. Cut off the bridge and see what's going on. And that seems pretty aggressive, and it'd be nice if we could maybe utilize some of our technology out there to do a better job. To top it all off, our patient also had this kind of a smile line, which made my life really difficult. And this is actually a case that I did as a live surgical procedure at one of the largest dental conferences in Canada called the Pacific Dental Conference. And what we're doing is we're just trying to look at everything and say, hey, listen, what are the possibilities? What can we do? Which teeth are broken? Which teeth are defective? We can see that the margins on the lateral incisors are not ideal. We've got some catches and it looks like some deficiencies in places. But when everything's tied together like this, is it the bridge that didn't fit perfectly, or is it the teeth shifted maybe, or is there an actual broken tooth? And so our patient, she was a great patient that allowed us to kind of really document this case and take a look. And the reason why it's called Pandora's box is, you never know what you're going to open up. What if they're all broken? What if everything, and then you've got to spend a heck of a lot of time doing a lot of dentistry and really trying to make something look right. And we want to make sure that we can provide the best care for the patient. So we look at her smile line, we look at how she looks in general and where things are at. We look at how much tissue there is. We can see there's some, we don't have harmonious gingival zenith, so the gingival margins are not perfect everywhere. And, but she loves the shapes of these teeth. You'll see this at the end of the case, whereas I like the different shape of front teeth, but she really likes this triangular type of pontic site and central incisors. So when we looked at the x-rays in detail and we saw the deficiencies in the lateral incisors, and then we said, okay, what can we do? How can we plan this differently? How can we use digital technology to plan this for us? So what we did is we took a cone beam CT, which is not part of the lecture specifically, but it's something that we utilize so we can bring someone into the surgical prosthetic, the digital workflow. And then from there, we took an iOS scan. And so by taking 3D technology, whether it's iOS scanning or cone beam CT, we take those and amalgamate it. This is a different patient, but we were able to take an iOS scan, so you get the idea. It's a color image of everything, so we can see what's going on. And in this case, we used the digital workflow, and we used 3Shape to create what's this. These are iOS scans, but these are 3Shape models. These are digital models of the patient's mouth in occlusion, articulated, and we can see what the tissues look like. We can see where we are in terms of occlusion and stability, and then we can start working it out. And with this patient, we'd say, well, what do we want to do? The patient's wishes are just to do the least amount of dentistry, but still provide her with something that's going to be stable long term. So we're trying to save the day. We utilize various digital workflows. In this case, we're using 3Shape in terms of smile design, in terms of looking at what size of teeth they are. We can see that our 1, 2, or our number 7 is deficient in the sense that it's not as high up in the gingival margin as it should be, so it can be harmonious with the other side. Everything else looks like it's fairly the right place, but we want to make sure that we plan our case out and discuss this with the patient. So the patient then can look at herself and say, hey, listen, if we were just going to do your 4 front teeth, if we could save the canine somehow, that'd be fantastic, and ideally we haven't found anything real wrong with the canine abutment teeth or the canines in terms of the marginal fit of the restorations. So what are we going to do? We're trying to make sure that we do a little amount of dentistry, but from a communication standpoint now with the images and workflow, we can then communicate to our patient. We can say, hey, listen, these are what we're thinking your 4 front teeth could kind of look like, and what do you think? And she actually didn't like this. She wanted the teeth to be more triangular, and she wanted her front 2 teeth to be more prominent because she really likes them that way. And so we adjusted that and worked it out. In terms of the treatment plan in the case, we know that let's just be hypothetical and say, what happens if the 2 lateral incisors are not doing well? Well, if they're not doing well and they've got to come out, then what are our options? We could place 2 implants in the central incisor routes and do cantilever lateral restorations. We could also put an implant in each lateral incisor and do a 4-unit implant bridge. We could also put 4 individual implants, which is very difficult to make look aesthetic, especially in a high smiler like we have for this lady at this point in time. And then what we do is we take the scan and we take the CT, and then we can start taking our digital wax up and we can plan the case. We can plan the case in terms of where would our implants go if we had to potentially. And then we can plan the final restorations, and so that they're screw retained, in this case, angulated screw channel technology. So we can have screw retained restorations no matter what. And, there's lots of technology out there that allows you now to have a lateral implant bridge and make it screw retained, even if the trajectory of the bone, which makes the trajectory of the implants be through the incised ledge or buccal to the incised ledge, you can still do something pretty aesthetic that's going to be screw retained, which is pretty awesome. This is a different case, obviously, but just demonstrating what's possible just through technology and proper planning and proper implant placement. So we also then looked at, hey, what happens if we have the best case scenario? The best case scenario would be that the bridge just doesn't fit well. And so what we do is we have the lateral incisors are fine, the canines are fine, and we just have to deal with the 2 central incisor sites. So we plan those 2 sites as a case, and we look at planning those cases, that case out. This is something you work with your lab on to make sure that you plan the restoration before you do the surgery. And this way we're able to then design the implant placement, but also the final restoration contours before we pick up a scalpel or a burr, which is something I talk about tremendously, is beginning with the end in mind, or building a house. We want to make sure we plan things properly. In this particular case, because we're doing a live surgery, we wanted to see, I had a really good hunch that I thought that it was just the bridge. The bridge wasn't fitting right, but I didn't know for sure. And so we thought, hey, listen, let's design a couple implant restorations that will be designed as final restorations, but they'll be used as temporaries, and see if we can do the implant surgery if we have to do 2 central incisors to be so accurate that we can put in fully hex screw retained crowns on the day of surgery, which would be, pretty monumental and pretty difficult to do, and to see if we put us up on the spot and it creates a little bit of attention and stress on stage, which we definitely had. So a lot of fun. And this allows us once again to plan things out. The green allows us to see what our final restorations would be like if this was the case. So the beauty of this is that this just takes time. This doesn't really take money in terms of being able to just plan out these different variations and plan out these things in the digital workflow in the software. So you can say, hey, listen, these are the potential issues, right? And then we get to 3D printing. So one of the best ways to take something from the digital workflow or from the digital plan is to then bring it to the real world, right? And how do we do that? Well, when it comes to implant placement, we do that through 3D printed guides or real-time guided surgery. These are 3 printers that we have in our office, Sprint Brain Form Labs, and they're not very expensive printers. They're all less than 5 or 8 grand. But they do a great job, and we utilize them every day. We have them running all day long, printing things left and right. And you think, well, what does a 3D printer going to provide me? Well, a 3D printer allows you to print a lot of different things. A 3D printer is going to allow you to then, you could print, digital dentures. For us right now, we don't print our final digital dentures. What we do is we mill them right now, but we utilize a printer to print every single try-in, every single mock-up, every single try-in, so that it's easy, it's quick, it's inexpensive, and it really allows us to provide something that's going to be fantastic. You can use it to print models. Most of the time, the models that you can utilize for this is more for diagnostic purposes. Most small printers aren't going to give you an accurate model enough that you could use the margin or so on and so forth. But it's something to hold the restoration, something to make sure that things are stable and go from there. And then we also could use it to print night guards. We can use it to print clear aligners if you're going to be doing any type of aligner therapy in your office, like clear aligners for orthodontics. You can do it for Essex retainers, so on and so forth, or even just some sort of a template to allow you to make provisional restorations. You can make provisional restorations with the 3D printer, so on and so forth. And then also, like I do, you can make some cool stuff like make some toys for your kids and so on and so forth. One of the cool things that you might take home is if you have this, if you haven't downloaded this this app for your phone, it's called Bellis 3D. It allows you to take an image of your face and have a 3D image, and you can print this. You can make your own bobblehead if you want. That's my head, obviously, bouncing around. But it really allows you to then take a look at someone's entire face, static image, but you're able to see kind of the drape of their smile, drape of their face, and in terms of how things look in terms of the pupils of their eyes and so on and so forth. And context. I know it's kind of scary at times. I'm kind of a scary guy, but in general, it's a lot of fun. So what we do then is take those options, those 2 central incisors, lateral incisors, and there are more than that, obviously. And we get 3D print guides. We can 3D print guides. We have 3D printing guides in our own office now for over 5 years for every single surgery that we would do as a guided surgery. And it allows us to then have full control of the workflow, whether we're providing a certain size of implant, whether it's a 2-0 twist-roll guide or whether it's a fully guided surgery for implant surgery. It allows us to just take whatever we're planning in the digital side or the virtual world and bring it into the real world, which is really important. And so we had various different guides made for this case on the day of surgery, so we knew what was happening. And then what we ended up doing is then we were able to mill things. You can mill temporary restorations. You can mill single units, multiple units, depending on the mill you have. Chairside, there's lots of amazing chairside mills out there, 5-axis mills out there, and you're able to really utilize materials to print, temp shells and print various shells that you can reline or pick up in the mouth and have them ready to go so that you're able to utilize them for any issues that are there. And that's what we did. And in terms of in-office milling, there's lots of different out there. We've been impartial to using a lot of Ivoclar products. So we have a PM7 and testing a PM1 for a long time. And it allows you to really provide something that's high detailed and great quality. And we've utilized CEREC has a great workflow as well. And there's other mills out there, My Plan Mecca and so on and so forth, that really do a great job. In terms of picking it at Chairside Mill, pretty much, once again, it's the same idea. You want to get something that's going to work well in the workflow. You want to be really, really happy with the software so you can design the restorations and know what you need. And then you got to decide as your practice, Are you doing a lot more, Emax or ceramic, or are you trying to do more zirconia in your office? Those are the two materials most people are utilizing, I think, worldwide for all the restorations, and especially when they're doing any kind of in-office milling. The beauty of milling is that you're able to mill things of differing um, standards. You can mill something that's really fine to provide you with a lot of anatomy, so on and so forth, or versus standard milling and then something that's just going to provide you with what you need in terms of occlusion, but isn't as pretty. And the mill can provide these in various different speeds, depending on the mill you're using, and of course, depending on the material you're using as well. And mills have come a long way now. For instance, with some of these mills, we can just control them with our phones. There's apps that you can take them and then decide what kind of material you're going to use and how your mill's doing, and if it's got how many different jobs is it done but that night or while you're gone. And it really allows you to really bring this to the next level, so it's pretty seamless, pretty easy in your practice. And on the same day, you're able to prep something in the morning and then send it up to get milled, and or have it milled in your office, and you can grab a coffee or grab some lunch and while it's doing its job. One of the cool materials out there that we use is Tetric. Tetric is a great material that is a nano ceramic block that we use for a lot of provisional restorations, that allows us to mill things and really provide high quality restoration. There's a temporary as well, and for some people this could be a final restoration. And when it comes to chairside milling, all the practices that I have been involved with and have known that utilize chairside milling or in-office milling in the office, they always do really well. They do. When we look statistically at how the practices do, they do really well. The reason being is because they're no longer doing an MOD, composite or composite filling. A lot of times they're turning those into onlays and inlays, which truthfully, are better restorations. They seal. They wear better over time. They keep their luster. They don't look all dull after a couple of years, and you can really provide something that is going to be really stable and really selectively important. So, like I said before, you want to make sure that whatever you're utilizing, you're able to provide same day dentistry if you can with milling, because that's the benefit, right? In 2022, we're becoming more and more instant gratification. It's teeth in one day, teeth now, teeth in an hour. So on and so forth. And depending on the market, if there isn't someone offering this type of service in your community, I will tell you that this will set you apart. This will give you a one up, because no one wants to wait. If you can come in and you can prep something and then have your final restoration that day, you don't have to wait a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks for the lab. That's always a benefit for everyone, and that really helps everyone do really, really well and stabilize things over time. And really, it will build your practice, really allow you to get there. And some of the things when it comes to milling is that it's like everything else, it's a learning curve. That's why I said you start off with iOS scanning, and then maybe the next thing that you jump into is printing because of the cost. And then if you kind of get going on that and you're actually utilizing the tools, then milling will be a great segue after that, and a great way to graduate into utilizing something so that you can make final restorations in your office all the time and provide that same day dentistry, which is really going to provide you with a one up. So Pandora's box, we were able to go about this. We were on stage and we were going to cut this bridge, and we asked to poll the audience and say, where would you cut this bridge if you had to cut it? And the overwhelming poll said, let's cut the two pontics off, because the two pontics, if the bridge isn't fitting well, the two pontics are cut. As soon as they're out, the other two sites, because they're independent of one another now, should move. And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. So when we took the two pontics off, the rest of the two segments separated, did not move very much at all. There was still defective marginal lateral incisors, but in terms of doing the day of surgery, we were able to really get that done. So what we did was we sectioned the bridge, removed the two pontics, we placed two implants with our 3D printed guide, and we tried to fit our screw-retained, fully hexed, screw-retained restorations on the day of surgery as temporaries, and we got it to work. You can see there's an open proximal contact on one side we need to adjust, and you can see that we need to change some of the contour of the restoration. But proof of principle, we were able to place our implants properly and get a really good result in terms of getting us two screw-retained fully X restorations in that don't look horrible, hopefully. I like the shape of these teeth a lot more, but our patient did not, let's put it that way. So in terms of our post-operative X-ray, we have a great result in terms of the implants going in, and we're able to do a graft on the outside as well to make sure that we were able to continue to keep that bone on the outside of those implants as we move forward. So at that point, then we waited and let those two crowns contour the tissue of those implant sites for about 3 to 4 months. After which time we said, okay, let's check the integration. Things look great. And then we looked at doing some selective crown lengthening and gingival contouring on the one lateral incisor to get our final restoration. So then we go back into the digital workflow, take a digital impression, put it into the software, and then we can start designing our final restorations. And of course, your lab is going to do this for you, or if you're going to get a mill, then you would do it yourself. One of the things that I always say is great from this image is that you can see that things look kind of squiggly on top because we're going to be layering porcelain in those areas. But from the underside, from the occlusal view, you can really see, hey, listen, everything that is going to be including the incisal edges, is monolithic. In this case, there are going to be zirconia-based restorations. The beauty of this case is that we were able to keep the canine retainer crowns that are part of the original bridge in place, smooth off the proximal contacts, and utilize them and really try to bring something that's harmonious, but really still have the least amount of dentistry for the patient that we can in the area, and still provide something that doesn't have a bridge because she didn't want a bridge anymore. She was tired of it. So it really allowed us to really provide something. So we can see our final restorations and on a model just to show and really to see what things look like. And we see them on there just ready to put in. And so that's what they look like on the day they went in. You can see that she wanted more of a triangular tooth in terms of the two central incisors than maybe I liked, but that's what she wanted. We did contour the lateral incisor area to try to provide a better harmonious gingival margin. We didn't necessarily do as much as maybe we could have. We could have probably done a bit more, but I also think it's a massive improvement compared to our previous bridge. And we didn't want to remove so much tissue and bone in the area that we then start to diminish support on the tooth and have to wait longer for things to heal. So we can see as things are closed up, we still have a very small triangle there that has filled in over time, which is great, and just provided something that she's really happy with in terms of the final restorations. And we were able to mill them in-house. We were able to 3D print our guides, mill our temporaries in advance if needed, and really to understand that, hey, listen, those canines are the original canines from her original bridge. And so little by little, we're able to still continue to keep things stable and contour and provide the power of 3D printing and milling and iOS scanning in one case, so that we were able to really try to utilize our digital workflow so that she's happy with her teeth and she's happy with the final result. And we were able to provide her something on the day of surgery or the day of cutting the bridge off that she was happy with and she could wear right away. And then try to still do the minimal amount of dentistry and provide her with something that she's super duper happy with. So I hope that concludes everything that I was want to talk about today. Just kind of really wanted to make sure that everyone understood the basis of the three different types of technology that are out there: iOS scanning, milling, and printing. Some of the benefits of it, just in a word, try to demonstrate it in a single case, and just really make it and just kind of make it think about different things that are out there. In terms of iOS scanning, like I said before, that's the first step you want to get to, and then after that it would be 3D printing and so on and so forth. And really get out there and just ask questions and talk to your reps and get out and talk to your colleagues. And if anyone wants to ask me any questions, I'm happy to answer anything right now. And I hope you guys enjoyed the last little while there.
Thank you, Dr. Birdi, for the excellent information. Doesn't look like we have any Q&A, so we'll just wrap up here. I'd like to thank everyone for attending. We did record tonight's webinar, so we will email the recording out via email sometime in the next week. And lastly, if anyone is interested in attending future webinars, visit henryscheindental.com/webinars for our upcoming schedule. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.